Hello all you roguelike CCG loving cosmonauts, as always I am Cosmic and today we're going to be reviewing Monster Slayers, a deck building roguelike adventure RPG brought to you by indie development studio Nerdook. Monster Slayers is a combination of roguelike dungeon crawling elements, RPG elements and CCG elements, and it culminates into a game that is surprisingly fun and surprisingly fast paced considering the amount of mechanics and the various tactics and strategies involved. First, let's start with the core mechanics of the game, which are of course first the deck building. Now, I love the card elements in Monster Slayers. It works very well and it is less cumbersome than other CCGs or other games that have deck building mechanics. It's very fast paced and fluid overall, and I love the fact that once you've chosen a class at the start of the game, you are able to then build upon that deck by adding cards as you come across them in the world. You can also buy cards, you can upgrade current cards to become better versions of themselves, and it adds a layer of tactics and strategy in there that I found really nice and fun to play. So for example, if you are a knight character that is focused on melee, you don't really want to be putting cards in your deck that are not going to suit your playstyle and your character. You don't want to be putting a load of mage cards in there, because if you do, it will dilute your deck and you're less likely to draw the cards that you need at any given time. It's important to, as you go through the game, to build up a deck that's going to complement each other and ultimately form combos in battle. So that means, you know, being able to draw 3 cards each turn, using those cards and potentially using more cards. So for example, you can say if I drew 2 basic attacks and an innovate or something along those lines, what I would be able to do is use 2 attacks to use up my AP. I would be able to use that innovate card, and that would give me 2 extra action points and then draw a card, or to draw 2 cards. And most cards, and there's a lot of cards that give you a ton of options, so you can use a single card in multiple ways. So one of the cards gives you the choice between adding 7 to defense, adding a HP, or using attack, and it's just gives you so many options that the strategy and tactical elements of the game are really open to you to really utilize. And one of the best feelings about the combat itself in terms of the card mechanics is being able to use 3 cards and turning those 3 cards into 6 cards and turning those 6 cards into really highly skilled damage combos. Now, this game is of course a roguelike, which means there are going to be multiple playthroughs and permadeath is real. What happens with the roguelike elements in this game is that you essentially have a character. Once you die, you get to carry on your character progression in terms of the upgrades that your character is able to get upon leveling up. You get a skill point and you're able to put in skills that usually just affect a various damage bonus, or increased health, or affects the leveling process in some way. So every level you'll gain 7 HP instead of 5 HP. Upon your character's death, you're also able to very easily change class, and so potentially you can play every single class in a single playthrough of the game depending on what you want to do. Your cards will start afresh, so all of the rare cards that you earned on a single run, once you die, they are gone. All of the upgrades you earned, all of the items and equipment that you earned, they will all be naught. Speaking of the equipment system, it works in a very simple way. As you progress, you gain items. Once you have finished a dungeon, you're able to switch out those items. You're able to purchase new items from various vendors that you will find in the levels themselves. And as you progress in the dungeon from room to room, you will have many encounters that will and can affect you in some way. So you're not just going to have battle encounters and the occasional merchant encounter. There will be treasures to find, various items, rare weaponry, and each item will be able to do something in particular, not only changing your base statistics for your character, but also adding cards, various effects to cards, and all that kind of thing. Now, I have to say that I really enjoyed Monster Slayer's combat. It was fast-paced, it was fluid, I loved the card system, I loved the strategic layer, the tactical layer of the game, and I loved that it was very fast-paced, so that I could really go through levels at my own pace. You were able to have multiple options in the pathing that you chose to go through the dungeon paths as well, so if I didn't want to face down an enemy 2 levels higher than me, then I could go somewhere else, try and build up a couple of levels before I took them on. Boss battles in particular were a lot of fun and very challenging, very difficult to play against someone who constantly just takes away your action points and takes away your health at the same time, but they were challenging, they were engaging, and they were fun. For me, Monster Slayers has one core issue, and that is the fact that it's an absolute blast for a certain period of time, but it has no real staying power. For me, it gets all of its elements and executes them well, but doesn't really have almost the grit and the steel to really keep you engaged long term. There's no real story involved in the game, and while there is a story in there, it isn't engaging. It's just there for the sake of having a story. I wouldn't say it's in depth in any way, and it doesn't take itself too seriously either. And that's not a bad thing necessarily, but you need to have more of a reason to keep going, because there are multiple products like this out on the market. Now, I have to say, this one is done exceedingly well, and it is one of the better executed ones up there. I mean, it looks great, it sounds great. I love the voice acting in the game. The art style of the game is really well done, and there's very little to like about Monster Slayers as a complete package. It really works, and it works well. It just doesn't have any staying power, however. It's a game that is so well executed in its core mechanics and in its overall aesthetic, I feel personally, but it's just one of those things that it doesn't have enough chops in terms of the meat of the narrative, in terms of the meat of the content, to make people stick around for a long period of time. And you look at comparatively to other games like this, maybe not card-based games, but roguelikes in general. You look at the things like Darkest Dungeon, you look at the things that have that strategy and that strategic layer behind it. And all of those games, well, at least a lot of those games, give you a reason to stay around long term, whether it be through narrative, whether it be through progression. Whereas for Monster Slayers, while it does give you a decent amount of progression and a decent amount of core gameplay, it lacks a strong narrative, it lacks world building, and it doesn't give you the emotional involvement in the game to really stick around for an extended period of time. Yes, it is going to be a game that you sit and play, and trust me, you will really enjoy it. It is a lot of fun, but you'll play it for like 2 hours one day, and then maybe a couple of hours the next day, and then a couple of hours the next day, and then you'll turn it off one day and you won't go back to it, and you probably won't even think about it again. It's a very enjoyable experience, certainly worth picking up if you are a big fan of roguelikes, if you're a big fan of deck building, that kind of thing. Certainly worth playing in that regard. For me overall, it is a fantastic game. There's no question about it. It's top quality, well executed, fun, fast paced, and ultimately is charming, but it lacks the longevity of its competitors. And for me, yes, go buy it. No problem. It's one of those things where it's a little indie game, you'll enjoy it for a couple of hours, and you will probably likely get your money's worth. However, if you're looking for something to really get your teeth into long term and spend a really decent amount of time into something, then Monster Slayers is not that game. It is fun, you will play it for a bit and you'll enjoy your experience, but after that you will probably never ever think about it ever again. And that is my review of Monster Slayers. Thank you so much for watching and listening. If you enjoyed the video, let me know in the comment section below. Hit that like button, make sure to subscribe, share on social media to places like Reddit, and as always, I will see you next time.